Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Venture Wisdom. This is the place we talk all things venture capital and private equity. We have been covering a lot of topics all this while, and we have been hearing a lot of investors talking about Gen Z. Today, we have a very interesting topic that we will be covering, which is more around the SilverTech and the older adults and the opportunity around the services or the products and the tech that is built to service that particular market. To discuss that, we have with us Raissa Hacohen. Raissa is the managing partner and chief investment officer of Longevity Venture Partners, investing in a very interesting category as I just described. So, Raissa, as I just said, very different category. Well, it has been existing for forever, right? We all are aware of the growing population and the aging population and a lot of things that are happening around that. But not many investors personally that I have come across who have been talking about that particular market as an investor. So you're investing in the startups which are servicing that particular market. Would love to hear that. But before we get into that, would love to hear a little more about yourself and Longevity and what do you guys do and how do you see the opportunity?
Sure. So Longevity Venture Partners started out as a CVC. Our first fund was a private fund backed by Communicare. They're a large conglomerate in the US with many long-term care facilities. And our first fund did quite well. So we had 2 exits fairly quickly. And we decided to roll out Fund 2. So Fund 2 is a $30 million focused SilverTech fund. SilverTech, for those of you who are not familiar, it's also referred to as AgeTech. It's the 65 plus population. So anything associated with the aging population. Personally, I think of it as more of a horizontal that cuts across many categories rather than a vertical. So the portfolio itself is about 50% health tech and 50%, I would call it social determinants of health. So we look at PropTech, we look at future of work, we look at EdTech. There are a lot of different factors that affect the aging population. We look at InsurTech and FinTech. So I don't consider myself a generalist, but it's a very fun category to focus on.
So fundamentally, you become a generalist because you cut across all different sectors, but those who are focusing on a particular segment of the society, which is the older adults. Is that correct?
Correct. There are investments that we've done with generalist funds that probably wouldn't consider themselves SilverTech investments, but we look at it for the aging population, and if we think it's revolutionary and going to move the needle for the aging population, we'll put it in the portfolio.
I think it's good to hear because I think day by day we all are inching there. I'm probably inching there faster than you are, but yeah, so good to hear somebody's taking care of that. But then when somebody thinks about the senior population, the older adults, I think the fundamental first 1 or 2 things that come in mind are healthcare and probably senior living, senior care. But you spoke about a lot of other pieces. You spoke about InsurTech. I can still relate with it. Then you spoke about EdTech and FinTech as well. I think looks like the market is much larger than what it seems from outside for the aging population, and would love to hear what that means to you.
Sure, I certainly believe that to be so. In terms of the way we look at aging, the category of healthcare now at the moment is more focused on sick care. When you sort of zoom out and you look at, well, what are the elements that are accelerating the aging population and how do we reimagine the future of healthy aging? You have to really look at all of the categories that are going to affect the aging population. It's financial security, it is healthcare, but it's also, there's a lot of prevention there. And so in my mind, the future of work is a very preventative measure, and talking about alternatives to retirement is very revolutionary for that segment.
Interesting. So, what are some of the themes that you see largely, and what are the geographies that you see are are bringing up more founders and startups focusing on the particular category?
So the super ager, and I have some statistics on this for you. Maybe we can dive into it a little bit later. But the super ager populations are China, Japan, the U.S. Japan is very focused on senior innovation and innovation in the aging space. The U.S. has got to start paying attention. There's quite a bit coming out of Israel. And a lot of societies are starting to have to pay attention to it.
The numbers or the names of the countries that you are quoting, is it more from the statistics around the aging population, or do we also see equal number of startups coming out of those geographies as well?
Well, it's not really apples to apples because the populations are different, but I would say that there are entrepreneurs all over the world who are thinking about the aging population, and it's our job to find the top 1% of those entrepreneurs and back them. The aging population cannot be ignored. Demographics are the strongest trend in terms of investment. So you look at, and if you'd like, I can share some statistics.
Would love to see that, of course. I think that will be very helpful.
So this report comes from the World Economic Forum. This is actually revolutionary. So the proportion of age 65 plus goes from 5% to about 10% between 1950 and now. From 2018 to 2020, again, from 10% to about 16%. So that's a very significant change.
It is.
Coupled with the fact that children under the age of 5 were at 14% of the population in 1950.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2050, they're going to be at around 5%. So those two populations crisscrossed. And we will now, for the rest of humankind, unless we decide to start having children again or have shorter lifespans, we will continue to have a population of elderly that is greater than our population of children.
Very interesting statistics to look at, and
does it keep me up at night? It absolutely. So I just want to dive in a little bit more.
Yes.
Because those statistics were global.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We actually have a bunch of sort of super ager societies, that's in black up here, where more than 20% of the population is going to be on the age 65 plus by 2040. It's a big number, and the statistics behind it, there's something called the old age dependency ratio, where it's the number of basically non-working, the 65 plus, for every person in the 65 plus category, there are X amount of working age persons in that society. So globally, I believe in 1950, we were at 12.7. We're now at around 7, and we're projected to be at 4.4. Again, that's globally. If you look at, where are we? Japan went from about 12 to 2. So there are societies that have to deal with this a lot more quickly than others.
So if I may ask here a question that I'm not sure about the distribution. I can see the distribution though, but there are few things which probably are not visible through this is how are the opportunities in the age tech different from countries where the social security for the aging population is better versus not?
So I think a lot of the startups focus on the US because healthcare by nature is privatized. And so it becomes a more severe financial burden more quickly. And so I think a lot of startups are focused on the US population, but Japan is very focused on innovation and automating different tasks around the elderly population. But this is life expectancy over the past couple hundred years. Now, if you look, first of all, we didn't really live past 40. But then we get to the 1900s, and if we're talking about 1950, The United States, the average life expectancy was about 68. If you go to today, we're at 79 now. I mean, that's an incredible jump. So think
Hmm.
about all of the social institutions that we've built and how that change in population proportion and how this life expectancy increase is going to basically force some of these social institutions. And we really need to rethink how living as a society. Now, I'm a big believer in tech, and I think tech can alleviate some of that burden. But this is a global problem that we need to start paying attention to from and tackling from a number of different angles, not just venture capital.
I would agree with that, and this brings up so many questions, Raissa, and I'm glad that you brought these stats up. And I think these are more curious questions as a person who's just getting introduced to this category. Is it with the life expectancy increasing, is the population aging healthier or not? Because otherwise, the primary focus would become healthcare, right? But when we are talking about so many other opportunities, and my personal belief would be, and I see this happening, right? My father or grandfather in their 50s used to look and behave much older than the 50s today are, right? They are much healthier. They have a better
Absolutely.
lifestyle and so on. So does that change? And would the focus be more than healthcare? And if yes, what would that be?
100%. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. So the conversation is around how do we match lifespan and health span? And there are statistics, and I can pull them up if you'd like to see them. But there are statistics around what societies the life expectancy is and the health expectancy. Usually, it's like 6 years different, right? Um,
Hmm.
yes, there's plenty. I mean, 65 is the new 25. But at the same time, we need to rethink the framework that we're framing society in. So right now we have education, you have work, and then you have retirement. Now,
Right.
the retirement age was set in 1916. And if we go back to my life expectancy graph, the life expectancy at that point was 54. So I really think we need to focus on reimagining the whole way we live in order to improve the way we age. I think working is part of that. I think education is part of that. And I think we need to make less rigid frameworks in order to really reframe what healthy aging can look like.
If I see, it's the older adults which are probably spending more on the travel now. They are spending more on the financial security, more towards the generational financial security, I would say. They have a different perspective of how they look at the wealth as a whole, and many other pieces for that matter. So, any of the other themes that comes to your mind, and you are focusing as an investor or not, doesn't matter, but generally that you are seeing evolving as we see, even if they are probably too early now, but you see them evolving over next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rethinking long-term care is really top of mind for a lot of people. There is a real estate shortage in terms of serving the population. That's number one. But number two is a lot of thought leaders have said that there's you have to split long-term care into the 85 and below and 85 and above because they have completely different needs, and there need to be more options than just independent assisted living. It needs more tailor made to the needs of the population. I mean, I think the 65 plus consumers. It's a great category. I don't know why there aren't more brands. I'm betting that there are billion-dollar companies that are coming out of this space because the need is so great.
Yeah. But then, from the founder's point of view, do you see the opportunities again, because that translates into the investment opportunities as well, and we are looking from that lens too. Do you see the opportunities more towards the directly serving the customers, a B2C model, or do you see the opportunities evolving on the B2B side as well? And what are those?
That's a great question. I think the answer is both. I think there's definitely room to serve the B2C population. I think the 65 plus population is ignored in terms of branding and brands that speak to them. And there should be more consumer brands focused on that space. And in terms of B2B, look, there are a lot of opportunities. Now, unfortunately, because you're dealing with a population or institutions that are very risk averse, as an entrepreneur, it's hard to get your foot in the door.
Hmm. But then even that, I would love to debate with the changes in the generation mindset, right? And that as the population goes through that generation change as well, that risk averse what my parents or grandparents used to be versus what I am today is different. I have a better risk appetite than what my parents or the grandparents had, and I would believe and somehow feel that my next generation, my children, when they get to that age, perhaps will be having a better risk appetite than what I have. Right. So does that change how the market looks at that population as well?
Yes, there's also sort of one fundamental issue in the market is that you often have an intermediary. Everyone calls it the favorite daughter persona. So it's usually the individual who's taking care of things on the
Hmm.
caregiver side, the primary caregiver. And so a lot of the products, at least from a B2C perspective, are tailored towards her, that persona. And so you're ultimately you have more than one customer, right? The stakeholder value chain, it becomes a little bit more complex because your user is not necessarily your buyer and your buyer is not necessarily your user, and you have to get everybody aligned. So I think there's some heavy lifting that
Yeah,
our
no, but I understand that point from the healthcare and senior care point of view. But if you look at other verticals, which you initially said, right, the EdTech, FinTech, InsurTech, and so on, do you see that same split of decision making in those verticals as well, or that will directly be pointed towards the
just in
seniors?
the consumer vertical.
Okay. And what are the opportunities that you see there? I'm curious, even from the EdTech point of view, it's hard for me to imagine what a 65-year-old would be looking at.
So with the EdTech revolution of Sarah, where everything kind of came online, there are a lot of opportunities for lifelong learning, upskilling, reskilling. Some universities, when they're on break, actually have private programs, 65
For the
plus population
seniors?
to come in,
Uh-huh.
and do some learning. I mean, there should be lifelong campuses, right? So I'm a big believer in lifelong learning, and I think again it needs to refit into the framework of reimagining the way we're actually structuring society. But I think the opportunity is there.
I think I love this part of reimagining how we look at that particular segment of the society. And like I started the conversation initially, right? Although I understand that product and service design is a lot more human centric than it used to be some time back. But then I still feel that human centricity is very different for different generations, right? So what those who are focusing on Gen Z versus those who are focusing on the silver tech or the aging population. What do you see as that part of human centricity in terms of their design and the thought process that is evolving and they should be keeping in mind?
Look, I think product is a good product, right? There needs to be ease of use, simplicity, accessibility, and customer support. So some of these things are not so intuitive.
They
You know where
use.
I think we really go wrong is more the branding. Like all of the 65 plus branding is you're old and it's not old. It's
It
just
is
not,
not. I
you know.
agree.
So I'm looking for some, hot brand opportunity. I really think there's opportunities for companies who are not speaking down to that population.
The changes in the tech that we have seen in last 2, 3, 4 years, I would say last 2 years, particularly with the AI coming in, do you see the change in how the aging population is serviced using AI? And what is it that you see coming up?
Most of it revolves around the administrative burden within the healthcare system. It's
Give me an
impossible.
example of that.
It's impossible to get appointments. It's impossible to book appointments. It's impossible to get a hold of somebody. You you have a caregiver coming to your house. It's impossible to get a hold of them and to know when they're coming, or the tech is completely missing.
Hmm.
And AI can very seamlessly do that.
And but the way it is evolving, I see a lot of things happening around humanoid, robotic AI, and or the fusion of robotics and AI. Do you see the caregiving and assistance given to the seniors with that tech in any near or midterm future?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. One that plagues me a little bit. I don't want the human side to be given over to robots. On the other hand, a lot that robots can do. So I think if there are like tedious tasks that can be taken care of by robots, but the human side of it, I get more concerned about.
Yeah, but then I get your concern, right? But if I'm sure there are certain times when perhaps you may have to switch your thought between concerned about those points as a human versus looking at it as a investor. So how do you balance that part?
Well, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the market thinks, right?
I get
So,
that. Yeah.
so you have to listen to their potential customers and talk to them and get feedback. There's an interesting company that I looked at, LEQ, Intuition Robotics. They raised a lot of money. They're sort of an industry darling, and I was just not a big believer in human robot relationships. And you should see their demo reel. Some of their customers have a very, very strong relationship with their robot.
Hmm.
They treat it like a pet. They talk to it like a pet. There's a strong connection there, and I believed it.
Straight out of a science fiction, but I think that's happening. We have been seeing how the robotics in a domestic life has been evolving, and how the startups are working on it. I'm privy to a couple of them who have been working on that. Would you be your advice to the founders who are building for that segment of society?
Yeah, I would say talk to your customers. Talk to your customers. I mean, I'm looking for your customer feedback. I think as an investor, you want to build conviction. So every investment that I've done, I believed in wholeheartedly enough to bring to my investment committee. So what I'm
Hmm.
looking for is really signals and reasons to believe. And the stronger you have, the stronger signals you have. If you have a strong customer pipeline, if you have design partnerships, if you have paying customers, I mean, those are all assets that I put in my toolbox to bring to my investment committee.
And what would be your advice to the investors who are not yet looking at SilverTech as a category to invest in?
You know what I'm finding actually is that there are a few niche funds that are focused on the space. Longevity Venture Partners and Primetime. Equitage is a new fund that just popped up. And so there are a few funds focused on the early stage space. But a lot of the deals are generalist deals. A lot of generalists, in order to diversify their portfolio, cannot ignore this aging trend. So they have to put one or two AgeTech focused startups in their portfolio. So a lot of the deals that we generalist funds. And so what I would say to my founders is you need to be attracted active enough to get the attention of a generalist fund.
Yeah. So because what I hear from what you have explained so far, along with the statistics and everything that you brought as part of the conversation, is that uh, doesn't matter if a fund is generalist or a fintech or a edtech or a robotics or a AI fund, there is always a room for this particular category that we are talking about because this is practically a set of the society, but it's still horizontal.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. A portfolio company that's doing quite well called Fairies. They do micro cleaning tasks in high-rise buildings. They're in New Jersey, New York, Tel Aviv, and they basically you can order on your app any micro task to be done. So come in and take out my garbage. Come in and fold my laundry. All these little micro tasks. And how I put it in the portfolio is I said, look, those housekeeping chores, not being able to keep your home is the sort of the first push towards the whole institutional side of long-term care. And if I can keep people at home longer for 1 to 5 years, I think I've done a service. I also think that they're like an incredible company. And it so happens that only about 15% of their customer base is in, my 65 plus vertical, but that's okay.
Ideally, I should have asked this question, and this probably would be my summing up question to you for this conversation. And as I said, I should have asked it in the beginning, and now I'm more curious about it. What brought your focus to this category?
I started out on the impact investor side, and I was focused on assistive tech at the time, and I was very interested in how tech can play a role to alleviate the burden between supply and demand in specific systems, like where there's a healthcare gap or where there's gaps in certain systems. What role can technology play? And so my love affair began with assistive tech, and it turned into SilverTech. I love the category, and I love my customers. So
Yeah, and then when you started looking at the numbers, it started making more sense.
well, the numbers you can't ignore regardless. Like
Yeah, I
the
see that.
numbers is what brings you. Like demographics are the strongest trend. Just for anyone who's interested in sort of drilling down in the space, there's an expert in the field. Her name is Karen Atkin. She's brilliant. She's called the gerontologist, and every year she publishes an AgeTech market map. And you'll see here sort of the different categories. There's health and wellness, independence, insurtech, retirement, a lot of the different sort of points that we talked about. But I think this is probably the most in-depth and up-to-date map we have in the industry. So anyone interested in learning more should definitely go to her website and check it out.
Yeah, no, I think this is very helpful because it's not just the reference to the verticals, but it's also a reference to certain companies, what they are building
Specific
to address
companies
specific.
and what they do. Yeah, it's there are links there too. It's a great map.
Oh, this is great. I think this probably should be an eye opener to many who have not seen that as a focus in their thesis for investment. Because yeah, why not? Because the numbers don't lie, and
Right.
we can.
You cannot ignore these numbers. Like once you see them, you can't unsee them.
I believe me, I am still blown away with the numbers that you have shown me, and I really appreciate you bringing that up. Puts things so much in context. As I said, it's anybody who sees it can never ignore it as part of their thesis because you can still be a generalist fund, and then alongside you can focus on the age tech as well. And I'm sure many of those who would listen to this conversation perhaps may start thinking on those lines as well.
Well,
But
I would like. I hope so.
I don't know. I have a feeling. So, and I hope that as well. It cannot stay hidden, secret just for you to take all the fun of investing in that category. So, we'll probably find some more people who will have fun alongside longevity and you investing in that particular
Let's hope
part of the
so.
world.
Let's hope so. The
Yeah, but
merrier.
appreciate your time, Raissa. This was, I would say, this was very insightful conversation.
Always happy to chat. certainly a pleasure, and I'm always happy to talk shop. So I really appreciate you inviting me on the show.